How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson. Thanks for tuning into the video. And I've reviewed lots of cars on this channel, but this is my first electric vehicle review. And I'll be honest with you, living with an EV isn't the most simple thing. And when I took this to my first fast charging station, I was surprised to see the bill. So in this video, I want to share with you what I like and dislike about this EV and what living with it is like. And make sure you stick around all the way till the end to hear my overall recommendations and to also see if having an EV will actually save you some money. And if you haven't already, please take this time to hit that subscribe button and also that notification bell so that you can be notified anytime we make a new video. If you don't care about any of the car's features and just want to see the cost analysis of this EV, please go ahead and jump to this timestamp. But if you want to stick around and learn what this is, it starts right now. This is the 2021 Volkswagen ID.4 First Edition. All of these are already sold out, but you can still order the Pro or the Pro S version. And in the future, there's going to be an all-wheel drive Pro S version, which is dual motor. Now, this is a compact crossover. It has enough seating for 5 people. There's a generous hatch area, plenty of technology like a big infotainment screen, wireless charger, wireless app connect so you can use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto without plugging in, and also a pretty fantastic set of safety features like blind spot monitoring, rear traffic alert, adaptive cruise control, and lane keeping assist. This being an electric vehicle, it doesn't have an internal combustion engine. Instead, it has an electric motor that makes 201 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque driving the rear wheels. Decent numbers for a compact crossover, not the most powerful, but also no slouch. 0 to 60 should happen in about 7 to 8 seconds. This also has an 82 kilowatt hour battery along the floorboard, which should give you a range of 250 miles. It has an efficiency of 104 miles for the city, 89 in the highway, and 97 combined. That's MPGE, or miles per gallon equivalent. If you speak in terms of kilowatt hour per 100 miles, this should give you 35. Pricing wise, this is the first edition model, which is, like I said before, already sold out, and it was priced at $44,000. But you can order the Pro model, which is the entry level, at $40,000. And there's also the Pro S model at $44,495 and an available all-wheel drive Pro S in late 2021 at $48,175. So this is a cheaper alternative to the Tesla Model Y and also the new Mustang Mach-E. Now, how does it drive? As for the driving experience, the ID.4 drives really nicely. The ride quality is very good, very smooth on nice roads, and when it gets bumpy, it still feels very stable and doesn't misbehave too much. The cabin is also very quiet. There is no engine, so you don't hear or feel any of the normal vibrations that you feel with internal combustion engines. You will hear some tire and wind noise, but to the same level as other crossovers. You just notice it more because that's the only thing you'll hear. Handling is also pretty good. With most of the weight placed right beneath you, the ID.4 feels more planted than other crossovers of this size. It's still not a sports car, but I really enjoy tossing this thing around. This being an electric vehicle, there is no transmission in the normal sense. There is a gear shifter and it's placed right beside the screen. It's a pretty odd place for a gear shifter and it also behaves differently. You rotate the dial in one direction and you'll engage the drive or B gear, and rotate it the other way and you'll go in reverse. Speaking of the B gear, that's what you normally find in hybrids and other pure electric vehicles. For this Volkswagen ID.4, this has no transmission. It's a single speed direct drive transmission, so there is no concept of a lower gear like in older automatics. Instead, when you go into the B gear, it increases the regenerative braking effect. And that occurs when you lift off the accelerator pedal. You will notice an immediate slowdown. EVs have that one pedal driving feel where you rarely have to use the brake pedal to slow down. It doesn't feel quite the same way here, but you can emulate that style by going into the B gear. I prefer to leave it in D because that emulates the traditional car feel, so that when you lift off the accelerator, you just coast just like other cars. As for the safety and driving assistance features, the ID.4 has a lot of those things nailed down. And once I turned it on, it engaged both the adaptive cruise control and also the lane keeping system, and I found that it works really well for highway use. And also, I haven't seen this mentioned anywhere yet, but this car seems to be able to change lanes for you. So as long as you have those systems turned on, just hit the blinker, and once it's safe to do so, it will just change lanes for you, actually shift lanes for you. And you just have to make sure to turn off the blinker so that you don't keep shifting lanes to other lanes. As for the interior features, some of them can be hit or miss. For instance, the 12-inch infotainment system is considered on the large end for normal cars, but maybe on the smaller end for other EVs. The screen quality is pretty good, but it can be sluggish at times. The menu system is also confusing. The placement of certain screens are buried within submenus. The screens can scroll in 4 directions. Pieces of information that you think should be clumped together are in different categories, like your charging data and consumption rate. Some of these pieces of information can be categorized a little bit better. All in all, there's a steep learning curve in using this infotainment system. It's unintuitive, and it'll take some time before you memorize where some of the menu items are located. And the presentation of some of those items use pretty weird language, which should make sense, but just feels kind of odd to see in the car, at least right now. For example, I know what a rear defroster is and what it does, but for the Volkswagen ID.4, it says clear view. So that'll just turn on the defroster. Or if you want warm feet, it says warm feet or warm hands, or cool feet, or fresh air and quick cooling. Thankfully, there's another menu system that says classic climate, and it basically does those same exact things, just presented in a fashion that you're used to. Another example is if you go to the driving assistance modes, you can see this diagram of a car that's in front of you and to the side of you. I'm guessing that's me right there. So if I hit the car in front of me, it'll show the adaptive cruise control settings and the distance that you could adjust to. Or if you press the car beside you, it'll also show you the lane change system and also whatever brightness does for that. Again, some of these menu systems don't make complete sense. And then there are other settings like this front assist, which will do automatic emergency braking. You could set the distance for the advanced warning. And finally, there's the dynamic road sign display. And yeah, so again, not very straightforward. Is it complicated? Not really. It just takes some time to get used to. As for the digital instrument cluster, it's got a nice small display. There's not a lot of screen real estate, and that's completely fine because it's only showing the critical information like your speed, how many miles before empty, your driver assist features, and whether your electric motor is using or generating electricity. Now, moving down the center console, you'll find some touch-sensitive buttons. You have your volume on, off, you have your temperature controls, and also your music levels. And beneath that, you have more buttons. One is for your parking view, so that you could check what's behind you. And then you have your climate controls, driving assist, and also drive mode button. And in here you could change the different driving profiles between eco, comfort, sport, and custom. And I found it kind of odd that in sport mode, when you lift off the accelerator pedal, it actually applies a good amount of regenerative braking, almost like you were driving in the B gear. Again, I don't know why that makes sense for sport mode. If you have a better idea as to why, please let me know in the comments below. Moving further down, you'll find a faux transmission tunnel that you can actually pass through and put things around here. And there's some customizable storage as well. So if I were to move up the armrest, you can actually remove the cup holders up here and then replace it in the forward section. Actually, you might have to turn this 180 degrees. There we go. And then here are some partitions so that you can help separate the area. And in between those two things is a very reliable wireless charger. Not all wireless chargers are built the same. I found that this performs really well. And I could put my phone in there with the case on and it could still charge. And right behind that, you have a couple of USB-C ports. As for the second row, there's plenty of rear legroom. The cabin in here is very easy to get in and out of, and there's plenty of headroom as well. The all-glass roof is awesome, and the rear passengers will appreciate this the most. And if there's too much sun, then you can close the curtain with this touch-sensitive panel. There's also a pass-through in the center armrest. And finally, on the doors, there's a window switch. I mention this because the switches on the front driver's door only has 2 switches and a rear window toggle switch. So if the driver wants to roll down the rear window, they'd have to toggle the rear switch first. Is it annoying? Not that much, considering how often do you really roll the rear windows down. It doesn't have haptic feedback though, so you'd have to look down whether it's activated or not, and sometimes touching the button doesn't actually register. As for the rear hatch, there's a lot of cargo space back here. With the second row in the up position, there's 30.3 cubic feet of space, and with the second row folded down, that number goes up to 64.2 cubic feet. There's also some extra partitions to secure some of your loose belongings and shopping items, like this removable floor and also the pockets on the sides. So the ID.4 checks off the proper crossover boxes. It has plenty of utility, plenty of room, good technology, and lots of good safety tech. But what is it like to take an EV on some road trips? And like I mentioned before, living with an EV hasn't been the easiest thing. Now, during the week that I've had this car, let me caveat it with a couple of things. First of all, I don't have good reliable charging at my house. I do not have a level 2 charger, so I've had to rely on public charging. There's a lot of them around my area. There's Chargepoint, there's EVGo, and there's also Electrify America, and I've been able to use all 3. Out of the 3, Electrify America was the best one. They had a 150 kilowatt charger, and I was able to go from 19% to 99% in 56 minutes and 23 seconds. And there's also more availability. There's usually around 4 or 5 plugs per station, though with the parking situation, it can be a bit strange because when I pulled up to it, there was 1 parking spot and 1 charging station with 2 plugs. Again, I don't know if that was supposed to be able to charge 2 cars, but there wasn't enough parking spots for the 1 station that was there. So if you look up where these Electrify America stations are, it may show up that there are 5 plugs there, but there are only 3 parking spots. Again, not sure how that's going to work out. I also used the EVGo station that has a 50 kilowatt charger, and I went from 19% to 50% in 33 minutes. I will say that the app experience with EVGo was not as straightforward. I had to use the payment option that was on the station itself. And that's the thing with these chargers too, is that you have to have the corresponding app on your phone. So to easily use these electric vehicles, you have to use a smartphone, which isn't really a big deal in the 2020s. Everyone has smartphones, but the smartphone integration, the app use, and the EVGo stations, it didn't communicate very well, at least not for me. And then finally, I also used the Chargepoint station. That's a 7.2 kilowatt charger, so that's a level 2 charging station. Again, not ideal for road trips because it will take hours for this car to get to full charge. That will basically just kill your road trip. So from those 3 stations, I could just walk away saying that the infrastructure for non-Tesla electric vehicles isn't there yet. Now, Tesla cars have been at it for many more years, and their infrastructure is pretty built up. Anytime you go to a Tesla station, there are at least 5 to a dozen stations available to you. But all of these other charging stations, usually there's only 1, 2, maybe up to 5 stations. So your mileage may vary, but again, the infrastructure for non-Tesla EVs isn't quite there yet. And it also doesn't help that these cars can't go up to a Tesla station and just plug in. You have to have maybe some special adapter, and I don't even know if that works very well or at all. But with Tesla cars, I believe you could use an adapter and charge at any of these other stations. Now at this point, I want to talk about the cost of charging at an Electrify America station, because after I was done charging, I looked at the bill and I was kind of surprised at how expensive it was. So the charging cost was 43 cents per kilowatt hour. That's pre-tax. And I charged for 55 minutes and 58 seconds, almost an hour. And total, it delivered 63 kilowatt hours of energy into the car. The total cost pre-tax was $27.09. Now, that can be cheaper with membership. I decided not to sign up for a membership because I wanted to know what the full cost was. And additionally, if you buy a Volkswagen ID.4, it comes with free charging at Electrify America stations for 3 years. Now, that's for Volkswagen ID buyers. This is a press loaner, so I didn't get those perks. But anyway, I was able to charge from 60 miles and it went up to the full charge, which is roughly about 250 miles. So 190 miles for $27.09. Now, if you do the math and if you compare it to another crossover, say a Tiguan, which is very similar in size and capability as this car, and that gets about 29 miles per gallon, a gallon of gas has to basically cost $4.13 for the ID.4 to be more economical. So this whole time I was thinking that electric vehicles are much more economical, much more easy and cheap to operate, but for road trips, that's not really the case because these fast chargers have rates that are much more expensive than residential rates, up to 3 times. So it would really behoove you to sign up for those memberships, try to get the free charging if you got a Volkswagen ID.4, because it can be really expensive to take on a road trip. So looking at that one fill-up bill, it made me think about how expensive it would be to operate an EV compared to just a normal internal combustion engine car for roughly a year or 15,000 miles. So I made a very simple spreadsheet, which I will overlay right over here. Now, first and foremost, this is a very simple analysis, and I'm probably ignoring or not including a lot of things. Again, this is just for an oversimplification of this analysis, just to kind of see from a cursory level whether, yes, an EV is cheaper or it's not. So I'm basically comparing between this Volkswagen ID.4, which this is the first edition. Again, it's already sold out, but a comparable one is the Pro S. So that sells about $44,500. So we'll just call it $45,000. And we're going to compare it to the Volkswagen Tiguan SEL, which is a middle-of-the-road Tiguan. Again, not the best, not the worst. So that should clock in around $35,000. Now, again, this is going to oversimplify a lot of things, so I'm going to ignore things like the $7,500 federal tax credit. Again, that's a significant chunk of money, but again, that may vary on a lot of different factors. And I'm also going to assume that there's already a level 2 charger in your home. Now, if you don't, then that's going to be another expense, because if you have 240 available, then it's going to cost the price of a level 2 charger. And if you don't have the proper wiring, then it's going to be even more expensive. So just for simplicity reasons, I'm just going to ignore that. And also, I'm going to ignore yearly maintenance and ignore insurance costs. So I'm basically just looking at this from an electricity cost perspective versus gasoline. So with that out of the way, again, if any of this is wrong, and it probably is, please let me know in the comments below. Let's have a discussion about this. Anyway, so let's assume that we're driving 15,000 miles a year and the cost of gas is roughly around $3. And the cost of electricity, at least for New Jersey, is around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And looking at the stats of the Volkswagen ID.4, this should get you about 35 kilowatt hour per 100 miles. Now, you want that number to be lower because you want to spend less energy per 100 miles. And for miles per gallon, if you're looking at the Tiguan, you should get 29 highway. And with that number, obviously you want it to be higher. So looking at those two numbers, to drive 15,000 miles in a year, you need 517 gallons for the Tiguan, or you need 5,250 kilowatt hours to drive 15,000 miles for the Volkswagen ID.4. Now, based off of the electricity rate and the amount of kilowatts or gallons that you need for the Volkswagen ID.4, you need to spend $682.50 in electricity costs. And for the Tiguan, you need to spend $1,551.72. So it's cheaper to operate the Volkswagen ID.4 per year because it's going to save you $869.22. But again, you're not always charging at home, and in my case, I used a public charger for the time that I have this. And if you look at the electricity costs for that, it goes up to 43 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, if you have an EV, it benefits you a lot by signing up for those memberships, or if you can get free charging, say at your office, then you should totally do that because it will really save you a lot of money. But if the cost of electricity goes up to 43 cents, then it's going to be more expensive to operate the ID.4 by $705 to drive 15,000 miles. So that's on the other end of the spectrum, which may also not make sense. So I did kind of like a weighted average where you did 80% home charging, but you also did 20% public charging. So like when you're going on a road trip. So we're looking at about 19 cents per kilowatt hour for that weighted average. And if you're using that model, the Volkswagen ID.4 is still cheaper by about $554. So out of all of that, if you take into account everything, there doesn't seem to be any real savings with going with an EV, because EVs generally cost a lot more. And there's other things that I'm ignoring. The value of your time. Yeah, sure, I'll just tack on another 30 minutes to my road trip, but when you actually have to do it, it's a totally different experience. Like, for example, one of my road trips was going to a wedding, and that ended at 11 p.m. and it was 2 hours away. So you had fun, you're tired, and then now you think, oh, I have to spend another 2 hours on the road. Oh, and by the way, we have to go to a rest stop and fill up with more electricity. We have to sit there for at least 30 minutes so that we can get going again. Bottom line, road tripping in an EV is still pretty challenging, and I don't think that the infrastructure is quite there yet. If you have a Tesla, it's a lot easier because, again, the infrastructure is much more built up that when you go to a station, chances are there's a place for you to fill in. But for these other charging stations, I had that real anxiety going on where I was thinking, I hope there's a vacant spot there, because if there wasn't, I'd have to wait even longer. And when I went up to these stations, there were some vacant spots, but within 5 or 10 minutes, another person or two showed up, and that could have been me. There's more than just range anxiety here. There's other types of anxiety going on, and if time is of essence, having an EV can be very challenging. Now, if you're just using an EV for commuting purposes where you have a level 2 charger at home so that you could top off every night, then it makes complete sense. And I think in the long run, after a couple of years, yes, it's going to be a lot cheaper to use an EV. And you're also going to save a lot more time because you don't have to take it to a gas station. And you're also not reliant on fossil fuels, which is another crazy thing. It just blows my mind that normal cars, every once in a while, you have to put in about 100 pounds of fuel in it so that you can go a couple of 100 miles. Whereas with EVs, there is no change in net weight of the car, even though they are heavier, but you basically just fill it with electricity and there are zero emissions. That just blows my mind. So my conclusion out of all of this is, if you're thinking about buying an EV to solely save money, then you should really do this in-depth analysis. Take a look at whether you qualify for the federal tax credits, see what it costs to install a level 2 charger at home, look at your driving habits, check out what kind of charging stations are available nearby, and also check out the electricity rates and figure out how much it would cost to, say, drive 12,000 miles or 15,000 miles. Do that analysis before you make this decision. Or if you want to have an EV just for the sake of having an EV, then the Volkswagen ID.4 is actually really good. This is a solid, compact crossover. There's plenty of space, lots of great technology, and it drives very nicely as well. Well, there you have it. That's kind of a long one, but I want to thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. Please let me know your thoughts on either the Volkswagen ID.4 or just my analysis overall. Was it a completely wrong approach? Did I totally ignore something that was super significant? Please let me know in the comments below. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. If you've learned something, please consider hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe and also the notification bell so that you can be notified anytime we make a new video. I'll wrap it up right there. This has been the 2021 Volkswagen ID.4 First Edition. My name's Hanson, and I will see you next time.